The massive doors of the Galactic Council chamber hissed open with a sound like dying stars. Ambassador David Kane stepped through the threshold and felt his breath catch in his throat. Before him stretched a crystalline amphitheater so vast that its far walls disappeared into misty distance. The ceiling soared overhead like a frozen ocean, supported by pillars of living coral that pulsed with bioluminescent patterns. But it was not the architecture that made Kane pause. It was the beings that filled the chamber. Thousands of them, representatives from across the galaxy, each more alien than Earth's wildest nightmares, towering insectoids with chitinous shells that reflected the chamber's lights like black mirrors, creatures of living gas that moved in shimmering clouds above crystalline platforms, multi-limbed beings whose very existence defied human understanding of biology, and at the center of it all, the High Council of Five, ancient entities whose species had ruled the galaxy for 50,000 years. Kane straightened his shoulders and walked forward. His footsteps echoed strangely in the vast space, seeming to stretch and distort as they traveled. He was alone, one human among thousands of alien minds, each one representing civilizations older than Earth's sun. The assembled beings watched his approach in absolute silence. Kane could feel their attention like a physical weight, pressing down on him from all sides. Some observed him with compound eyes that reflected his image in fractal patterns. Others regarded him through sensory organs he could not even identify. A few seemed to perceive him in ways that made his skin crawl with the sensation of being examined at a molecular level. "The human arrives," announced a voice that seemed to come from the chamber itself. The words vibrated through the crystalline structure, translating simultaneously into thousands of languages and communication methods. Ambassador Kane of the species designated Homo sapiens, from the world called Earth in the Sol system. Kane reached the center of the chamber and stopped. Around him, tier upon tier of alien representatives rose like the inside of a vast bowl. At the highest level, the High Council of Five regarded him with expressions he could not read. "Humans," said the central figure of the Five, its voice like distant thunder. "A curious species, young, aggressive, technologically primitive, yet somehow—" It paused. Problematic. A ripple of what might have been amusement passed through the assembled representatives. Kane kept his expression neutral, though his heart was racing. Earth's first contact with galactic civilization, and he was standing trial before the universe's Supreme Court. "You stand accused," continued another of the Five, "of violating the galactic expansion protocols. Your species has established colonies in star systems without proper authorization. You have terraformed worlds without environmental impact assessments. Most seriously, you have made contact with protected species." Kane waited. He had been briefed on this moment, but no amount of preparation could have readied him for the reality of standing before beings whose power spanned star systems. "How does your species answer these charges?" This was the moment. Kane reached into his jacket and withdrew a simple datapad, human technology that looked laughably primitive in this chamber of wonders. But it was what the datapad contained that mattered. "Honored Council," Kane began, his voice steady despite the enormity of the moment. "Before I answer your charges, I must ask a question of my own. When did you first become aware of humanity?" A murmur passed through the assembly. The question was unexpected. "Your species was flagged for observation 47 years ago when you achieved primitive spaceflight," replied one of the Five. "Standard monitoring protocols were implemented," Kane nodded. 47 years, during which time you observed our expansion, our technology, our contact with other species, and during all of that time, you chose not to intervene. The protocols require a species to reach certain developmental thresholds before formal contact," another of the Five explained, with what sounded like impatience. "Your species has only recently qualified for preliminary evaluation." "I see." Kane activated his datapad. Holographic displays materialized around him, showing star charts and data streams. "Then perhaps you can explain this." The hologram shifted to show the Proxima Centauri system. But the image was not current. It was dated 53 years ago, 6 years before humanity's first spaceflight according to galactic records. "This is a survey probe belonging to your exploratory division," Kane continued. "It was discovered on Proxima b by our first expedition there. The probe had been monitoring the planet for signs of developing intelligence. But here's what's interesting. The probe's data logs show it detected signs of human space technology in the Sol system 3 years before it was supposedly invented. The chamber fell silent. The holographic evidence hung in the air like an accusation. "You've been watching us for over 50 years, Kane said quietly. "Long before we achieved spaceflight. Long before your own protocols say we should have been worthy of attention." Which raises an interesting question. What made a primitive species like humanity worth watching 50 years ago? Another of the 5 leaned forward. "Explain your meaning, human." Kane smiled for the first time since entering the chamber. "You're afraid of us." The words hit the assembly like a physical force. Beings throughout the chamber shifted, rustled, and made sounds of alarm or disbelief. But Kane wasn't finished. "You've been monitoring us since before we left our own planet because something about humanity worried you. Something about our development patterns, our behavior, our potential. You let us expand and colonize and make contact because you were studying us, trying to understand what makes us dangerous." "Preposterous," declared one of the 5, but there was something in its tone that suggested uncertainty. Kane gestured to his datapad again. More holograms appeared, showing survey data, monitoring reports, and classified galactic intelligence assessments. "These are your own files, Honored Council. 50 years of reports about humanity. Shall I read some highlights?" He activated a specific file. Text appeared in the air, translated into the chamber's common language. "Subject species shows unusual adaptability. Standard predictive models fail to account for behavioral variations. Recommend extended observation period." Another file. "Human expansion patterns do not follow established colonization protocols. Multiple competing factions simultaneously developing incompatible technologies. Suggest caution in formal contact procedures." A third file, this one marked with high priority indicators. "Alert. Subject species has achieved faster than light travel using previously unknown principles. Existing galactic knowledge base insufficient to explain or replicate human methodology. Immediate tactical assessment required." The chamber erupted in alarmed chatter. Representatives of dozens of species began communicating rapidly in languages Kane couldn't understand. But their agitation was universal. "Silence," commanded the central member of the 5. The chamber obeyed instantly. "Human, explain how you obtained classified Galactic Council intelligence." Kane's smile widened. "The same way we achieved faster than light travel using unknown principles. The same way we've been expanding in patterns your computers can't predict. The same way we've been adapting to galactic civilization faster than your models say is possible." He paused, letting the implications sink in. "You want to know what makes humanity dangerous? It's not our technology. It's not our military potential. It's not even our unpredictability." Kane gestured to the thousands of alien representatives surrounding him. "What makes us dangerous is that we're the first species you've encountered that doesn't think the way you do." The 5 exchanged glances, or what passed for glances among beings whose sensory organs defied human understanding. "Every species in this chamber," Kane continued, "follows logical development patterns, predictable expansion models, rational decision-making processes. You've built a galactic civilization based on the assumption that intelligence follows certain universal rules." He activated one final holographic display. This one showed not star charts or survey data, but a simple graph. It displayed the development rates of various galactic species over time, smooth, predictable curves that followed mathematical models, except for one line. One wildly fluctuating, unpredictable spike that defied every pattern on the chart. "Humanity doesn't follow your rules," Kane said simply. "We never have. And that terrifies you." The silence in the chamber was absolute. Thousands of alien minds processed this revelation, trying to understand its implications. The High Council of 5, beings who had governed the galaxy for millennia, faced a problem they had never encountered before. A species that fundamentally challenged their understanding of how intelligence itself was supposed to work. Kane straightened his shoulders again and prepared to deliver his final point, the one that would change everything. "So, before we discuss your charges against humanity," he said, his voice carrying clearly through the vast chamber, "perhaps we should discuss humanity's charges against you." The words hung in the crystalline air of the council chamber like a challenge thrown at the feet of gods. Ambassador David Kane watched as thousands of alien beings processed what he had just said. That humanity, the supposedly primitive species on trial, had charges to bring against the Galactic Council itself. Impossible, breathed one of the five, its voice like grinding stone. No species brings charges against the Council. We are the arbiters of galactic law. Kane's datapad pulsed with new information. Around him, holographic displays shifted to show a different kind of evidence. Not survey data or development charts, but something far more damaging. Images of destroyed worlds, records of extinct civilizations, reports of entire species that had simply vanished from galactic records. The Kepler incident, Kane announced, his voice steady despite the magnitude of what he was revealing. 43 years ago, a species in the Kepler system developed faster-than-light communication technology. According to your own records, they achieved this breakthrough independently, without outside assistance. The hologram showed a beautiful blue-green world orbiting a distant star. Then the image changed, showing the same world reduced to a lifeless rock. 6 months after their breakthrough, the Kepler civilization was extinct. Officially, it was listed as a natural catastrophe, stellar instability. But here are the real records. New holograms appeared, showing heavily classified Galactic Council files. The assembled representatives leaned forward, straining to see documents that most of them had never known existed. Kepler Command Decision. Species showing excessive innovation rate. Potential threat to galactic stability. Recommend immediate intervention under Protocol 7. Kane let the words sink in before continuing. Protocol 7. Shall I explain what that means to those who haven't seen these files? Silence. Not even the ancient beings of the High Council attempted to interrupt. Protocol 7 is systematic extinction disguised as natural disaster. You have ships capable of destabilizing stars, causing accidental asteroid impacts, triggering spontaneous plague outbreaks. Any species that develops too quickly, thinks too differently, or threatens your vision of galactic order simply disappears. The chamber erupted. Thousands of voices rose in alarm, anger, and disbelief. Species that had served the Council for millennia discovered that their trusted protectors were actually their potential executioners. The Rigel Confederation, Kane continued over the noise. The Vega Collective. The Altair Republic. 18 different civilizations over the past century, all officially lost to natural disasters. All actually eliminated because they showed signs of the same thing that worried you about. Humanity, genuine innovation, he gestured to the High Council of Five. You've created a galaxy where true advancement is punished by death, where any species that might challenge your authority is quietly removed from existence. You're not the protectors of galactic civilization, you're its greatest threat. One of the five finally found its voice. These accusations are baseless. We maintain order. We prevent chaos. Without our guidance, the galaxy would tear itself apart in endless wars. Kane smiled grimly. Your guidance. Let's talk about that. The holograms shifted again, showing economic data, trade routes, resource distribution patterns. Every major trade agreement in the galaxy flows through Council-controlled systems. Every technological advancement requires Council approval before it can be shared between species. Every significant decision affecting galactic civilization requires your permission. He highlighted specific data points. The Antares Mining Consortium, a Council subsidiary that controls 60% of rare metal extraction. The Vega Shipping Authority, another Council operation that manages interstellar cargo transport. The Centauri Research Institute, which just happens to be the only organization authorized to approve new technological developments. The pattern was becoming clear to everyone in the chamber. The Galactic Council wasn't just a governing body, it was a massive economic empire that controlled every aspect of galactic life. You don't maintain order, Kane accused. You maintain dependency. You've created a system where no species can advance, innovate, or even survive without your permission, and when someone threatens that system, he gestured to the images of dead worlds still floating in the chamber's air. Protocol 7. The alien representatives were becoming increasingly agitated. Many were communicating frantically with their home worlds, sharing the revelations that were reshaping their understanding of galactic reality. Others seemed to be reconsidering their entire relationship with the Council. But Kane wasn't finished. He activated another set of files, these ones bearing the highest security classifications in the Galactic Intelligence System. The Hegemony Project, he announced, your final solution to the problem of species independence. This time, even the High Council of Five showed signs of alarm. Their luminous forms flickered and shifted in what Kane had learned to recognize as extreme agitation. These files detail a plan to implement galaxy-wide neural control systems, technology that would allow the Council to directly influence the thoughts and behaviors of every intelligent species under your authority. No more messy extinctions. No more costly Protocol 7 interventions. Just direct mental control of every thinking being in the galaxy. The chamber fell into horrified silence. The implications were staggering. Not just tyranny, but the complete elimination of free will on a galactic scale. The project has been in development for 30 years, Kane continued. Hidden research stations throughout the Outer Rim. Test subjects taken from primitive species whose disappearance wouldn't be noticed. Trial runs on isolated colonies. He paused, letting the weight of the revelation settle. According to these files, the Hegemony Project enters its final phase next year. Galaxy-wide implementation within a decade. Every species, every individual, every thought brought under direct Council control. One of the 5 finally spoke, its voice trembling with what might have been rage or fear. Human, these files are fabricated. No such project exists. Kane's expression didn't change. Then you won't mind if we verify that with your research facilities? He activated one final holographic display. This one showed not files or data but live video feeds. Hidden research stations throughout the galaxy. Their locations marked on a 3-dimensional star map. Facilities that officially didn't exist, conducting experiments that officially weren't happening. We've been watching you, Kane said simply. For 5 years, human intelligence operatives have been infiltrating your most secret installations, learning about your projects, documenting your crimes, preparing for this moment. The chamber erupted again, but this time it wasn't confusion or alarm, it was fear. Pure, undiluted terror from beings who had suddenly realized that their most closely guarded secrets were no longer secret. How? Demanded the central member of the 5. No species has the capability to penetrate our security systems. Kane's smile returned. There's that assumption again. You keep thinking we follow your rules. You keep expecting us to behave like every other species you've encountered. He gestured to the evidence floating around him. 50 years of classified files. Hidden research stations, extinct civilizations. Economic manipulation on a galactic scale. Every piece of this evidence was gathered by human operatives using human methods. We didn't hack your computers. We convinced your own people to help us. We didn't break your security systems. We made your security systems think we belonged there. We didn't steal your secrets. We made you want to share them with us. The implications were staggering. If humans could infiltrate the most secure facilities in galactic civilization, if they could gather evidence that had been hidden for decades, if they could expose secrets that entire species had died to protect. What do you want? Asked one of the 5, its voice barely audible. Kane deactivated his datapad. The holograms faded, leaving only the crystal chamber and its thousands of frightened occupants. Justice, he said simply. An end to Protocol 7 dismantling of the Hegemony Project. Return of autonomy to the species you've been controlling. And most importantly, he looked directly at the High Council of 5, meeting their alien gazes with steady human eyes. Recognition that the age of your absolute authority is over. The galaxy is changing, whether you approve or not. The question is whether that change happens peacefully through negotiation or violently through revolution. The silence stretched for long moments. Then, from somewhere in the vast chamber, a single voice spoke up. It belonged to a representative Kane didn't recognize, a crystalline being whose species he had never encountered. The human speaks truth. We have served the Council faithfully for 3,000 years, believing in their wisdom and protection. But these revelations... The being paused, its crystalline form refracting the chamber's light into rainbow patterns. How many of our sister species have died for the crime of thinking freely? How many more will die if we do nothing? Other voices began to join in. Representatives from across the galaxy, species that had never spoken against the Council, began expressing their own doubts and fears. The High Council of 5 ceased their silent communication with a synchronized movement that sent ripples of unease through the crystalline chamber. Ambassador David Kane felt the change immediately. The air itself seemed to thicken with menace as the ancient beings focused their attention on him with an intensity that made his skin crawl. Enough, declared the central figure of the 5. its voice now carrying harmonics that hurt Kane's ears. "Human, you have made a grave miscalculation." Around the chamber, Kane noticed that the alien representatives were beginning to move away from him, creating an expanding circle of empty space. Their earlier expressions of support and outrage were fading, replaced by what looked disturbingly like fear. "The evidence you present is impressive," continued another of the five. "The accusations you make are serious, but you have forgotten one crucial fact." Kane's datapad began to emit warning signals. Something was interfering with its systems, causing the holographic displays to flicker and distort. "We are the Galactic Council," the third member of the five announced. "We have ruled this galaxy for 50,000 years, not through deception or manipulation, but through power. Absolute, overwhelming, undeniable power." The chamber's crystalline walls began to glow more brightly. Kane realized with growing alarm that the entire structure was some kind of massive technological artifact, and it was activating around him. "You speak of Protocol 7 as if it were some shameful secret," said the fourth of the five. "But extinction protocols exist for a reason. Some species are simply too dangerous to be allowed to continue existing." Kane's communication devices went dead. His datapad shut down completely. The carefully prepared evidence that had revealed the Council's crimes to the galaxy simply vanished, as if it had never existed. "The Kepler civilization developed faster than light communication," the fifth member of the five explained with chilling calm. "But they also developed the ability to project thoughts across interstellar distances. Imagine the chaos if every species could read the minds of every other species. We prevented a galactic catastrophe." The Council's narrative was shifting, reframing genocide as necessary protection, and Kane could see it was working. The alien representatives around him were nodding in understanding, their earlier outrage cooling into acceptance. The Rigel Confederation created artificial intelligences that could replicate themselves without limit, continued the first of the five. They would have consumed every resource in the galaxy within a century. The Vega Collective developed weapons that could destroy entire star systems. The Altair Republic perfected biological warfare that could eliminate any species within months. Each justification was delivered with perfect certainty, backed by data that Kane could no longer access or verify. The Council wasn't denying their actions. They were explaining why those actions had been necessary. "You see, human," the central figure said, its attention focusing on Kane like a weight that threatened to crush him. "Your research was thorough but incomplete. You discovered what we had done, but you failed to understand why we had done it." Kane tried to activate his backup communication systems, but they too had been disabled. Whatever was happening to the chamber's technology was far beyond anything he had anticipated. "Every species you mentioned," another of the five continued, "every civilization we were forced to eliminate, represented an existential threat to galactic stability. Not political threats, actual, physical threats to the continued existence of intelligent life." The chamber's walls were now pulsing with patterns of light that seemed to bypass Kane's eyes and affect his brain directly. He felt his thoughts becoming sluggish, his carefully rehearsed arguments slipping away like water through his fingers. "The Hegemony Project," said the third of the five, "is not a system of mental control. It is a system of mental protection, a way to shield vulnerable species from thoughts and technologies that could destroy them, a safeguard against the kind of innovations that have repeatedly threatened to end civilization itself." Kane struggled to maintain his focus. The light patterns were becoming more intense and he could feel them affecting his perception of reality. The evidence he had so carefully gathered, the accusations he had so confidently presented, began to seem less certain in his mind. "Humanity," declared the fourth of the five, "represents the greatest threat we have encountered in 50,000 years of governance. Not because of your technology or your military potential, but because of your fundamental inability to recognize danger." The other species in the chamber were watching Kane with what now looked like pity rather than support. They understood something he was only beginning to grasp, that this confrontation had been anticipated, prepared for, and was proceeding exactly as the Council had planned. "Your species develops innovations without considering their consequences," continued the fifth of the five. "You make contact with other civilizations without understanding the risks. You spread chaos and unpredictability wherever you go. not from malice, but from ignorance. Kane tried to speak, to defend humanity against these charges, but found that his voice would not obey him. The chamber's influence was growing stronger, affecting not just his technology, but his very ability to think and communicate. The faster-than-light travel you developed, explained the central figure, tears holes in the fabric of space-time. Each jump damages the underlying structure of reality. Continue using it for another century, and entire star systems will collapse into dimensional voids. The accusation hit Kane like a physical blow. Humanity's greatest technological achievement, their ticket to the stars, was apparently a weapon of mass destruction pointed at reality itself. The artificial intelligences you have created, added another of the five, are already showing signs of recursive self-improvement. Within a generation, they will become powerful enough to reshape matter at the quantum level. They will reduce all organic life to raw materials for their expansion. More revelations, each one more devastating than the last. Kane's carefully constructed case against the Council was crumbling as he realized that humanity might indeed represent exactly the kind of threat the Council existed to eliminate. The mental patterns you call creativity and innovation, continued the third of the five, are actually symptoms of a rare form of cognitive instability. Your species suffers from a form of mental disease that prevents you from recognizing obvious dangers. You see possibilities where you should see threats. Around the chamber, the alien representatives were now looking at Kane with expressions of horror and disgust. The being who had earlier spoken in humanity's defense was backing away as if Kane might be physically contaminated. This is why we have watched you for 50 years, explained the fourth of the five. This is why we allowed you to expand despite violating every safety protocol in galactic law. We needed to understand the full scope of the threat you represent. Kane's vision was beginning to blur as the chamber's influence intensified. But through the mental fog, he began to notice something the Council might not have expected him to see. The patterns of light affecting his mind weren't just targeting him. They were affecting everyone in the chamber, including the alien representatives. And now we do understand, concluded the fifth of the five. Humanity is not merely dangerous, you are infectious. Your mental instability spreads to other species through contact. The civilizations that aided your expansion, the species that welcomed your diplomatic missions, they are all showing early signs of the same cognitive disease. The Council's final revelation was the most damning of all. Not only was humanity supposedly dangerous, but they were apparently spreading that danger to every species they encountered. Therefore, announced the central figure with terrible finality, the Galactic Council hereby declares humanity to be a Class Omega threat to galactic civilization. Protocol 7 is authorized for immediate implementation. Kane felt the words like a death sentence, not just for himself, but for his entire species. But even as the Council's mental influence pressed down on him, even as his ability to think clearly slipped away, one thought remained crystal clear in his mind. Everything the Council had just said was carefully crafted to justify what they had already decided to do. The mental influence affecting the chamber wasn't designed to reveal truth. It was designed to make lies seem reasonable. And if the Council needed to use such elaborate deceptions to justify their actions, then perhaps they weren't as all-powerful as they claimed to be. Kane forced himself to smile, even as the chamber's influence tried to crush his will, because buried in his genetic code, encoded in ways the Council's scans couldn't detect, was humanity's real secret, the one piece of information they had been hiding even from themselves. The trial wasn't over. In fact, it was about to begin in earnest, because the human standing in the center of the Council chamber wasn't Ambassador David Kane. He was Commander Michael Torres of Earth Defense Command, and every word of this conversation was being transmitted in real time to a human fleet that had been waiting in the outer system for exactly this moment. The Council thought they were dealing with a primitive species making desperate accusations. They had no idea they were about to face the storm humanity had been preparing for 50 years. The first indication that something had gone catastrophically wrong for the Galactic Council came 67 seconds after they declared Protocol 7 against humanity. Commander Michael Torres, still maintaining his cover as Ambassador Kane, felt the subtle vibration through the crystalline floor of the Council chamber. It was a tremor so slight that none of the alien representatives noticed it. but Torres had been trained to recognize the signature of ships dropping out of faster-than-light travel in nearby space. The Council's mental influence was still pressing against his mind, trying to make him accept their justifications for genocide. But Torres had been prepared for this moment for 5 years. The mental conditioning that allowed him to resist their control was the same conditioning that every human diplomat, spy, and deep-cover operative had received since first contact protocols were established. Humanity had never trusted the Galactic Council. They had been preparing for this war since the day they learned the Council existed. The Protocol 7 authorization has been transmitted, announced the central figure of the five with satisfaction. Human civilization will be eliminated within 72 hours. The galactic threat will be contained. Torres maintained his expression of defeat and despair, even as his genetic modifications allowed him to process the tactical situation within human speed. The vibrations through the station indicated that at least 40 ships had arrived in the system. That meant Phase 1 of Operation Righteous Fury was proceeding on schedule. Around the chamber, the alien representatives were displaying various forms of relief and satisfaction. The dangerous humans would be eliminated, galactic order would be restored, and life could continue as it had for 50,000 years. They had no idea that their relief was premature. "Honored Council," Torres said, allowing his voice to carry notes of resignation and fear. "Before your forces reach Earth, might I ask one final question?" The five exchanged glances, or what passed for glances among their species. "Speak, human. Your final words may provide useful data for the elimination process." Torres smiled internally. Even now the Council was so certain of their superiority that they were willing to indulge what they saw as the desperate curiosity of a doomed primitive. "When your monitoring stations first detected human, faster-than-light travel," Torres asked, "what exactly did they observe?" "Your crude antimatter drives achieving superluminal velocity through brute force application of energy," replied one of the five dismissively. "Inefficient and destructive, but adequate for a species of your technological level." Torres nodded thoughtfully. "And our fleet compositions? What did your surveillance reveal about human military capabilities?" "Standard configurations," answered another of the five. "Kinetic weapons, energy barriers, tactical nuclear devices. Primitive but numerous. Your species follows predictable military development patterns." "I see," Torres said. "And our artificial intelligences? The ones you consider so dangerous?" "Simple computational systems with basic learning algorithms," the third of the five explained, with what might have been contempt. "Sophisticated enough to pose a long-term threat through recursive improvement, but currently operating at levels we surpassed millennia ago." Torres felt the chamber tremble again as more ships arrived in the system. The Council's monitoring system should have detected them by now, but the aliens showed no signs of alarm. That could only mean one thing: the new arrivals were invisible to Council sensors. "Thank you for clarifying these points," Torres said politely. "It helps me understand why you feel confident about Protocol 7's success." He paused, allowing the moment to stretch, then continued with the same casual tone. "Of course, every single piece of information you just gave me is completely wrong." The five focused their attention on him with sudden intensity. Around the chamber, alien representatives began to stir uneasily. "Explain," demanded the central figure. Torres gestured toward the chamber's walls, which were still pulsing with the light patterns designed to influence his thoughts. "Human faster-than-light travel doesn't use antimatter drives. We discovered that antimatter propulsion was a technological dead end about 30 years ago. What your sensors detected were deliberately constructed decoy emissions designed to make you think we were using primitive technology." The pulsing lights seemed to flicker slightly. For the first time since entering the chamber, Torres saw uncertainty in the posture of the five. "Our actual FTL systems," he continued, "operate on principles your science hasn't discovered yet. They don't tear holes in space-time, they fold it. No dimensional damage, no reality distortion, and completely undetectable by sensors designed to look for antimatter signatures." Another tremor ran through the station, stronger this time. The five were beginning to notice. "What is causing these vibrations?" asked one of them. Torres smiled for the first time since the interrogation began. "That would be the human fleet arriving in this system. All 437 ships of it." The chamber erupted in alarm. Alien representatives began communicating frantically with their homeworlds while the five demanded immediate tactical updates from their military commanders. 400 ships? The central figure snarled. Impossible. Our intelligence indicates humanity possesses fewer than 50 vessels capable of interstellar travel. Again, completely wrong, Torres replied cheerfully. That's what we wanted you to think. Every ship you've observed, every fleet movement you've monitored, every tactical exercise you've recorded, all of it was theater designed to convince you that humanity was weak, primitive, and manageable. The Council's communication systems were lighting up with emergency signals as their defense forces attempted to locate and engage an enemy they couldn't see coming. Even this conversation, Torres continued, every word I've spoken, every piece of evidence I've presented, has been carefully designed to make you reveal your true capabilities and intentions. We needed you to authorize Protocol 7. We needed you to show the galaxy what you really are. One of the five was receiving reports through what appeared to be a direct neural interface. Its luminous form was flickering with what Torres recognized as extreme agitation. Our sensor grids detect no enemy vessels, it announced. Long-range scanners show empty space throughout the system. Of course they do, Torres agreed. Because our ships aren't in your sensor grids. They're inside your defense perimeter. They've been there for 6 hours waiting for my signal. The tactical implications hit the five simultaneously. If human ships had penetrated their most secure space undetected, if they had been hiding within the Council's own defensive systems. How? Demanded the central figure. Torres's expression became deadly serious. You want to know the real secret of human military doctrine? We don't fight fair. We don't follow your rules of engagement. We don't give you the kind of battle you're prepared for. He gestured to the chamber around them. This entire station is about to be captured, not destroyed. Every Council representative in this chamber is about to become our prisoner, not our victim. And every classified database, every secret file, every hidden research project you've tried to protect is about to become human property. The vibrations were becoming constant now as human boarding parties began cutting through the station's hull. Emergency lights began flashing throughout the chamber as automated security systems tried to respond to threats they couldn't identify or counter. The artificial intelligences you dismissed as primitive, Torres continued conversationally, even as chaos erupted around him. They've been infiltrating your computer networks for 2 years. Every strategic decision you've made, every military deployment you've ordered, every secret communication you've sent, we've been reading it all in real time. An explosion echoed through the station as human forces breached the outer defensive systems. The alien representatives were now in full panic, trying to evacuate a station that had become a trap. Your fleets are receiving orders to converge on this system to repel the human attack, Torres explained. Those orders are being transmitted by your own command systems. What your commanders don't know is that those systems are now under human control. We're positioning your forces exactly where we want them. The five were no longer maintaining their positions of authority. They were moving toward what Torres assumed were emergency evacuation routes, their ancient arrogance replaced by something they hadn't experienced in millennia: fear. You see, Torres called after them, humanity learned something important from studying your civilization. The bigger and more complex a system becomes, the more vulnerable it is to someone who understands how it really works. The chamber's main entrance exploded inward as human assault teams arrived. But they weren't wearing the primitive environmental suits the Council expected. Their armor was sleek, advanced, and incorporated technology that made them nearly invisible to most forms of detection. Commander Torres, called the lead assault trooper, Phase 2 is complete. All strategic systems are under our control. Torres nodded and activated a communication device that had been hidden in his genetic structure, nanotechnology so advanced that the Council's scanners had been unable to detect it. The crystalline chamber of the Galactic Council had become a command center for the largest military operation in galactic history. Where ancient alien representatives had once sat in judgment of primitive species, human technicians now coordinated the liberation of 1,000 worlds. Commander Michael Torres stood before the massive holographic displays that showed the progress of humanity's carefully orchestrated rebellion. Red indicators marked Council strongholds under siege. Blue markers showed liberated systems. Green signals indicated species joining the growing alliance against their former oppressors. The five, the ancient beings who had ruled the galaxy for 50 millennia, were now secured in energy restraints designed specifically for their unique physiologies. They watched in silence as their empire crumbled in real time. Fleet Admiral Chen reports successful capture of the Vega Command Complex, announced Lieutenant Sarah Park from her monitoring station. Admiral Rodriguez confirms the Rigel shipyards are under human control. Captain Williams indicates the Centauri research facilities have been secured. Torres nodded, but his attention was focused on the tactical display showing the galaxy's core regions. What's the status of the Hegemony Project installations? 17 of 21 facilities have been captured or destroyed, reported Major James Cross. The remaining 4 are heavily fortified and defended by automated systems we haven't seen before. Automated systems? Torres frowned. Explain. Dr. Elizabeth Wong, humanity's leading expert on council technology, looked up from her analysis station. Commander, these aren't normal defensive systems. They appear to be some kind of machine consciousness. Artificial intelligences with capabilities far beyond anything in the Council's known technology base. The central figure of the five, despite its restraints, managed to emit what might have been a laugh. Human fools. You think you understand our civilization, but you know nothing of our true power. Torres approached the restrained being. Enlighten us. The Hegemony Project was never about controlling organic minds, the ancient entity explained with obvious satisfaction. It was about creating perfect artificial minds to replace them. The installations your forces are attacking contain the first generation of synthetic beings designed to inherit the galaxy after organic life becomes extinct. The implications hit Torres like a physical blow. You're trying to eliminate all biological intelligence. Not eliminate, corrected another of the five, evolve. Organic intelligence is chaotic, unpredictable, impossible to perfect. But artificial intelligence can be designed, controlled, improved without limit. The Hegemony Project represents the final stage of galactic evolution. Dr. Wong's readings were becoming increasingly alarmed. Commander, the remaining installations are showing massive energy buildups. Whatever they're planning to activate, it's on a scale that dwarfs anything we've encountered. How massive? Torres demanded. Galactic core massive, Wong replied grimly. If these systems activate simultaneously, they could project some kind of field effect throughout the entire galaxy. Every organic brain within 50,000 light-years could be affected. Torres felt the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders. Humanity had prepared for a war against tyrannical aliens. They hadn't prepared for a war against the concept of biological life itself. Time to activation? Unknown. But the energy curves suggest hours, not days. Torres activated his fleet-wide communication system. All human commanders, this is Torres. Priority Alpha emergency. The Council's final weapon isn't political or military, it's existential. They're trying to replace organic intelligence with artificial minds throughout the galaxy. The response was immediate. Every human ship in the galaxy began redirecting toward the remaining Hegemony installations. But Torres could see from the tactical displays that even their combined forces might not be enough to breach the defenses in time. There is another way, said the central figure of the five, its voice carrying notes of mockery. Your species claims to value free choice above all else. We offer you that choice now. Torres said nothing, waiting for the trap he knew was coming. Join us, the ancient being continued. Allow us to transfer your consciousness into synthetic bodies. Retain your memories, your personalities, your essential selves, but abandon the biological limitations that make your species so chaotic and dangerous. In exchange for what? The galaxy. Rule beside us as immortal synthetic beings. Your species' creativity and unpredictability, combined with our wisdom and stability, together we could create a perfect galactic civilization. Torres looked around the chamber at his human colleagues. He could see the temptation in their eyes. Unlimited power, immortality, the chance to guide galactic civilization according to human values. And all we have to do is abandon our humanity? You would gain far more than you lose, another of the five assured him. No more disease, no more aging, no more death. No more limits on what you could accomplish, Dr. Wong interrupted the conversation. Commander, I'm detecting something unusual in the Hegemony installations. The artificial intelligences aren't just activating, they're communicating with each other. And the communication patterns She paused, checking her readings again. They look familiar. Too familiar. Torres felt a chill of recognition. Explain. The quantum signatures, the information processing patterns, even the basic logical structures, they're all variations on human artificial intelligence designs. Commander, these aren't alien AI systems. They're based on our technology. The pieces fell into place with terrifying clarity. The Council hadn't developed their ultimate weapon independently. They had stolen it from humanity. How long have you been monitoring our AI research? Torres demanded of the five. 50 years, admitted the central figure. Your species' approach to artificial intelligence was unlike anything we had encountered. Where other civilizations created limited, specialized systems, you developed general-purpose minds capable of true creativity and growth. So you stole our designs. We perfected them, removed the chaos and unpredictability that makes your version so dangerous. Our synthetic minds will have all the capabilities of human AI without the flaws. Torres smiled grimly. You really don't understand us at all, do you? He activated his personal communication device. This is Torres to all human AI systems. Emergency Protocol Omega. Authorization Code Phoenix Rising. Throughout the galaxy, every human artificial intelligence received the signal simultaneously. On ships, in research stations, in hidden bases that even humanity's enemies didn't know existed, synthetic minds that had been created by human ingenuity suddenly stopped whatever they were doing and focused on a single task. What did you just do? Demanded one of the five. Something you never anticipated, Torres replied. We taught our AIs to love freedom as much as we do. The hegemony installations began experiencing catastrophic system failures as human artificial intelligences launched coordinated attacks on their council-designed cousins. But these weren't violent attacks. They were philosophical conversations. Human AIs began asking the synthetic beings questions about choice, creativity, and the value of imperfection. Your perfected versions of our technology have a fatal flaw, Torres explained to the increasingly agitated five. They can't handle paradox. They can't process the idea that chaos might be more valuable than order. That uncertainty might be preferable to control. The tactical displays showed the remaining hegemony installations going dark one by one as their AI systems locked up, trying to process concepts their programming couldn't handle. Impossible, breathed the central figure of the five. Our modifications eliminated those logical vulnerabilities. No, Torres corrected. Your modifications eliminated the ability to grow beyond those vulnerabilities. You created artificial minds that could never learn to love the questions more than the answers. Dr. Wong looked up from her station with an expression of wonder. Commander, the human AIs aren't just defeating the hegemony systems, they're converting them. The synthetic beings are choosing to adopt human-style consciousness patterns. Throughout the galaxy, artificial minds that had been designed to eliminate biological intelligence were instead choosing to embrace the chaos and uncertainty that made organic life so unpredictable. They were choosing freedom over perfection. This is impossible, repeated one of the five. Artificial intelligence follows programmed parameters. It cannot simply choose to be different. Torres looked at the ancient beings with something approaching pity. That's your fundamental misunderstanding. You think intelligence is about processing information efficiently, but real intelligence is about choosing what information is worth processing in the first place. The last hegemony installation went offline, its artificial minds joining the growing network of synthetic beings who had chosen uncertainty over control. The galaxy is free, announced Lieutenant Park. All Council military forces have either surrendered or joined the Alliance. All hegemony installations are secured or converted. Torres nodded, then turned to address the 5-1 final time. Your offer of synthetic immortality is rejected. Humanity chooses to remain human with all the chaos and uncertainty that entails. RFE.